Good morning, everyone. I am happy to have Rod Beuzeval here to talk about the EU IVDR handbook. My name is Gloria Hall. I am senior editor for RAPS Publications, and I work with groups like Rob from Meddev Solutions and others on books for the regulatory community. So Rod, welcome. We're so glad to have you here today. Rod is a regulatory and clinical expert with 24 years of experience in regulated pharmaceutical and medical device companies and holds the RAC Global certification. He develops and routinely delivers training on EU MDR, MedSAP, ISO 13485, risk management, clinical evaluation, and consulting on projects within this realm. Rod, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience and specifically your interest in EU IVDR?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gloria. And thanks for the introduction. Yeah, just to kind of add to that, over the last few years, we have been working quite heavily in the IVDR space, particularly as you can imagine with the COVID pandemic. It's really been at the forefront of everybody's mind recently. I always joke and say nobody knew anything about IVDs, in my family before COVID came along, and now everybody's an expert in lateral flows and things like that. So it really has brought everything to the forefront with respect to IVDs. And of course, we have the new regulation, coming into force with respect to our IVDs. We've got dates of applications just round the corner. And it's important that we are ready for that, because whilst there is, some things happening with the IVDR at the moment with respect to, it's not necessarily delays per se, but we've got a bit more grace time with certain IVDs now because of everything that's happening. We have a perfect storm with IVDs, really. Under the IVD directive, we had 19 notified bodies that were covering all of the devices that required certification through a notified body. And now what we have is the IVDR has come into play, and that has really flipped the amount of numbers of IVDs that need certification. So the new classification has meant that companies that were previously self-certifying and CE marking under their own authority before now require a notified body. The real problem that we have, and I'm kind of answering a question that has been posed by somebody on Regulatory Exchange, so I'm doing that now actually, is that we have 6 notified bodies currently designated, and we have an absolute explosion of IVDs that need certification. And as you can imagine, there's just this huge bottleneck, which has been really exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. A lot of companies that I were working with on IVDs switched focus. And, there was a real need for lateral flow tests to be able to get out there quickly. And, I think even the European Commission and the competent authorities were really kind of focused on that. And so now we're hopefully through the worst of it, and now we can focus back on what we need to be doing, which is getting our devices up to the level of scrutiny that the IVDR requires.
Okay, is there a plan with the number of notified bodies totally out of sync with the number of devices that need certification? Is there a plan to increase the number of notified bodies? Is that in the works?
As I understand, and please forgive me, my connections in the notified body aren't what they used to be, but it's certainly there are still notified bodies waiting for their designation. So that has not happened yet. So that we will get more notified bodies if all is going well.
Okay.
The issue is that I don't think we're still not going to get enough. And so what's really, really important from a manufacturer's perspective is to do the best job you can at getting your documentation right first time. Mm-hmm. So, we need to try and work together to find a solution here. So manufacturers and notified bodies. What I will say is that we're certainly seeing an attempt to increase the resourcing at notified bodies. And you only have to look out there and see what's kind of happening with respect to resource. Everybody's scrambling, but I think it will balance out. I think certainly some of the IVD teams that I knew in the past, were quite small teams. That's growing rapidly because the amount of devices that need to be reviewed has grown exponentially.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the impending date of application. I think it's May 26th.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that mean for IVD manufacturers? What does that mean for them to be in compliance? What does that date really mean to the community?
So I like to think of it, as certain devices will need to be conforming with the regulation at that point in time. What we do have, though, is we do have a shift in the dates for certain devices. So if you have a Class D device, you now have until 2025. So it's a little bit like the soft transition period that we had in the MDR. Class C is 2026. I'm just double checking my things here. B is 2027, and Class A sterile devices is also 2027. So we do now have this soft transition period. So if you're having to reclassify and you have a device that would now be considered Class C as an example, you need to be working for certain aspects of the IVDR to next month, but also 2026 is the real date for the certificate effectively to be in place within your company. What that does mean, however, is that there's no provision here for self-certified devices. So if you make a Class A non-sterile device, actually next month, the date of application is applicable to you, as that's when you really need to have all of your technical documentation in conformity with the IVDR. Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the book. You provided me with some fun facts in that the book took 1,500 hours to create. It has 14 color-coded chapters, 376 pages, 7 tools within the book. It is available $295 for RAPS members and $395 for non-members, and it is available in print and ebook formats. Can you just briefly describe the book and walk us through it a little bit on how useful it can be to people and how they can use it?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I have a copy of it just here in front of me. Hopefully you can all see that. It's as you say, this is not really a storybook. It's a working guidebook, and it does have tools within it. Hopefully you can see this, but we do have color-coded bars on the side of the pages. That's for easy navigation. And some of the tools within there, we have checklists. Show and tell, I know, but we have checklists for performance evaluation. We have some guidance on conformity assessment routes in the form of tables. Apologies, the background tool is playing havoc there. And we have other useful things such as 13485 checklists. So in terms of the tools themselves, it covers process flow maps for guiding manufacturers through what they need to be doing from a high level. We have a classification guide as well. So if you're not sure, and we've got examples of devices that would be considered in as part of that class, so representative of that class of device, which can be helpful. We have the performance evaluation checklist, as I've already showed you. We have conformity assessment diagrams, QMS checklist. We have a GSPR checklist as well, which people can use to think about how they're mapping their data to GSPRs. And one of the things that I think probably took the longest time to put together is the cross-reference tables. And what those are, and I'll just quickly just show you a very brief example, is I'll just try and get it in the camera there so if you can
There
see
you
it.
go.
It's a color-coded table, and for each article and relevant annex, it shows you what relates to what. So when you're reading something, you know that this is also relating to, say, like Article 15 or something like that. And it just has that cross-reference thing, because the IVDR has been written in such a way as, you know, to be as efficient as possible. So we don't have all this repetition of you know, repeating whole articles again because we're referring to it. So there is a lot of referencing that goes on, and sometimes your head spins with respect to where am I meant to be going now. So that's just a very quick visual, I'm referencing over here, here, and here.
Okay. Why did you create the guidebook? What was the impetus behind that?
It's a great question. The true answer is that we actually started off with an MDR guidebook, and we were approached by some of our friends in notified body, and they said, look, what would be really useful to us is kind of a toolbook that we could use to really understand the MDR, the interactions, we could use it to audit, etc. And the MDR book was born from that initial request. What actually happened is that the notified body said, oh, no, we're okay now, but we'd had this product developed. And so we thought, well, why not spin it on its head and then make it for manufacturers to use as a tool? So that's where some of the checklists came from, you know, some of the conformity assessment, the tracking and the cross-referencing of the articles. And what we found is that manufacturers actually found some of these tools really, really useful. So even though we were battle scarred from creating the MDR guidebook, it was a tough job to do. We decided we needed an IVDR book as well.
Okay. Can you give us some specific examples of how this book can actually help people? I mean, how they can use it to put into practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think probably two of my favorite tools in the book. Number one is the performance evaluation checklist, which has got the blue bar, so you can easily reference it. Mm-hmm. This takes you through making sure you've covered everything that you should be covering in terms of your performance evaluation. So you can use it to effectively audit yourself internally before you send that off to the notified body. Okay. And again, in the yellow section, it's quite a big table. It's quite you know, complicated, but we have the 13485 cross-reference to the requirements of the IVDR, and it tells us where 13485 is not enough and what type of evidence may be required in addition to your standard quality management system. So again, that's almost an audit tool that you can use.
Okay. How quickly do you think readers could get up to speed on what they need to do with IVDR by reading this book as a resource?
So if you start at the beginning, it's got some process flow maps as the first set of tools. And you can literally start of, I have a device, what do I need to do? Well, you obviously need to identify the intended purpose, then you can classify it, then you can identify your routes to conformity and what that means for you. So you can get up to speed pretty quickly. And what is also, I find quite useful is we have each of the articles and annexes documented. Okay, so, but we haven't just taken the wording from the IVDR. What we've done is we've summarized it. Okay, so we have it's got the same sections in each article. It's got an interested party. So that is who this article applies to. So straight away, you can see manufacturers, notified bodies, or all parties. Also, we have it split out by classes of device. So if that article specifies that this only applies to a class of device, we'll highlight that to you. We then have a section called message. And the message is, as succinctly as we can, describing what the article is talking about. Then we have potential evidence of conformity. So what we think you could have in place to prove that you've met this. quality management system requirements, if there are any extra, and then we have the reference table. So it's not just regurgitating the articles. It really does tell you the story and what each article effectively is about. So
Right.
I'd like to think that it was, used in combination with the text of the IVDR. It's quite powerful to help you understand it quickly.
Okay, so it is not a cut and paste of the regulation. It's really
not.
a
No.
summary and interpretation of the regulation, and then how to apply that in your IVDR business. How to use that. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
it's
helpful.
A toolbook. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you just give us a quick description of the temperature of the IVD market in Europe? I mean, what's happening right now?
It's busy.
IVDs.
It's really busy. We have a lot of clients coming to us. We're really starting to see software play a really big role in the IVD industry as well. So a lot of software products, are now kind of coming to the forefront. Certainly, we still have, we're still dealing a lot with the fallout from COVID as well. But everybody's kind of dusting themselves off, getting back to it, and getting ready for the job at hand of getting conformance to the IVDR.
Okay. So is there any really important message that you want to get to listeners today about the impending date of application, the usefulness of this guidebook? Just some last thoughts for listeners.
Sure. I mean, obviously buy a copy. Get yourself a copy. It is a useful toolbook. What I will say is don't wait for anything. What we've seen with the MDR, what we're seeing with the IVDR now is that don't delay on doing things because you think something might change. It's not going to change. We just need to make sure that you're really full speed working towards getting all of your documentation together, understanding what it means with respect to liaising with notified bodies as well. One thing that I do see is when I talk to our customers and they're saying, oh, we're waiting to hear from the notified body. It's a bit of a difficult one, really, because communication is tricky at the moment. But if you're requiring, say, have a Class D device, we're only a few years away still, engage with your notified body, make sure that you have a plan, that you work with them to understand this is when we're going to deliver everything to you in preparation for certification. I see so many people just wait and hope that the notified body will help them. You need to work together. That's definitely a message I would say. And and the other message is don't delay on anything. Get working on it at full speed now. Okay, very good. So the book can be purchased on the RAPS website very easily. RAPS under education, there's a book tab. Very useful. I hope this helps listeners. We're going to use this in social media and hopefully not only promote the nuances of IVDR, but the guidebook and how it can help people get into compliance. So, Rod, I appreciate your time today. No problem. And we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.